My name is Cynthia Scullly, and I'm honored to talk to you today about my family's experience, specifically with Levine Dickson Hospice House and our journey. My husband, Fred, was 29 years old last fall when he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. We went to the hospital shortly after Halloween, thinking that he had pneumonia and that we were going to come home after a couple days of IV antibiotics. And what we quickly learned was that it was cancer and it had spread extensively. It was in his left lung, his right lung, his lymph nodes, his liver, the bones in his pelvis, the bones in his spine, and in his brain. Fred was a lifelong non-smoker and very young, obviously. So to be diagnosed with such advanced lung cancer was an extreme shock. We have a daughter named Carrington, and she was about 15 months at the time, had just gone trick-or-treating. I mean, we had such a beautiful life and everything to live for. And so we were really thrown by the diagnosis and felt like the world was caving in on us. So knowing that it was probably going to be our last Christmas together, some people we actually haven't met yet, still to this day, gave us some very generous donations so that we could still buy Christmas presents for each other and make it a really meaningful, memorable Christmas, and sort of the way our Christmases used to be, without having to worry about, what about the medical bills, and what about the cancer treatment that we're paying for, and Fred not being able to work. And I thought that was a really special gift because we did make it a beautiful Christmas. It felt more like a typical Christmas than I would have imagined, and I think it's because of all those wonderful people who really stepped up to make sure that Carrington and our entire family had a beautiful Christmas. And all of those things that our friends and neighbors and family, complete strangers, were doing for us helped us to realize that there really is love and hope and joy still left in the world, even though our world was so dark. It was a blessing to see all these wonderful, beautiful things people were doing. It really helped us to know that the world wasn't as dark of a place as it felt to us at that time. No one was really giving us recommendations as to what to do next or where to go because he was 29, and no one wanted to say, I'm sorry, we should probably stop fighting. Nobody wanted to say those words to us. And so Fred and I were left in the hospital in the middle of the nights, wide awake, saying, well, we can't go home safely. And we can't stay here forever. What do we do? And fortunately, we were connected with some hospice and palliative medicine nurse practitioners and social workers while we were at the hospital. And even our insurance company was working with us, and they started saying, have you thought about hospice? And really we hadn't. Our doctors hadn't talked to us too much about it, and we didn't really know. So it was while we were there that we were starting to learn about what hospice could do to finally help Fred be more comfortable. And in the middle of the night, in mid-April, I was wide awake while Fred was sleeping in the hospital, and I pulled up Levine Dickson Hospice House, their website. And I'd actually had a friend whose husband had passed at Levine Dickson about 6 months before, and I knew she'd had an incredible experience. And I knew it was closer to home. We live in Davidson, and Levine Dickson is located in Huntersville. And I really wanted to be near our daughter, and so did Fred, and so I started reading about it, and I think I spent that whole night, I read every nook and cranny of that webpage, learning all about it and looking at the pictures. And at one point that night, Fred woke up, and I was excited he woke up because I'd been just anxious to show him these pictures and talk to him about this idea of being transferred to Levine Dickson. And I took his iPad, I had the pictures pulled up, and I took it over to him in bed. And I was expecting him to not be sure, and I was expecting him to have a lot of questions. And instead, he looked at these pictures of this beautiful place. And he just looked at me and he said, yes, that's where I want to go. Let's go there. I want to be there. And it was such a relief in that moment to know that we had a place to go that could help us and really help Fred and our whole family. And just knowing where we could go and be safe. And for me as the caregiver, to know that I didn't have to go home and have all that burden of his care on my shoulders, worrying about him and feeling so unqualified to care for him. It was just such a blessing. And I slept that night, and I hadn't slept in days at the hospital. And once we'd made that decision, we both slept the rest of the night, woke up in the morning. Our oncologist rounded early. And he actually said to me, you know, Cynthia, I don't think we have much time left. And honestly, he probably should have been in hospice already. But he's 29, and I'm hesitant to recommend that. And I said, you know what? We've already decided. We want to go to Levine Dickson. Please help us be transferred. And he too sort of had this deep breath of knowing that that was the right thing to do. We walked into this beautiful building. Fred has always loved the mountains. That's something I introduced him to. And Levine Dickson has this sort of modern mountain lodge feel to it. And it was just a very Fred place. It's a beautiful place. It's very welcoming and comfortable. And after days under the fluorescent lights of a hospital, to walk into this soothing, home-like environment was really comforting. And we felt like we could rest when we arrived at Levine Dickson. It was just one of countless examples of where I realized that though everyone at Levine Dickson is near the end of their life, the staff there haven't gotten numb to it. I mean, every patient that is passing, every family that is suffering, they suffer with them and support them. And it's as much as they see, we were never just a number. I mean, they spent so much time with our family and truly felt what we were feeling. And I think that really helped me in that anticipatory grieving process of watching my husband pass very slowly, to have this body of people around me to help me when Fred was sleeping and I couldn't draw strength from him. I had so many people there holding me up. And when he passed, that day, it was a Saturday, May 19th of 2012, I just had that sense of we took excellent care of him until the very end, and I have no regrets. And I'm so thankful for that. As his birthday approached, I started to think, well, I really want to give back in some way. I thought back on all the conversations Fred and I had had when he was sick about wanting to pay it forward and how much Fred really wanted to give back and pay forward all that kindness that we'd received. But he never really got his chance. He never got to that point where he was feeling well enough to work on any of that. And so it occurred to me that I could use his birthday to pay it forward on his behalf. And so the first place I thought of was Levine Dickson, and I had been thinking that I wanted to thank the staff and volunteers there in some way. And to be honest, I'd really been missing it. It had been my home for so long, and it was my safe place. So I realized that I wanted to go back there on Fred's birthday and just do a little something to say thank you. And so I talked to my counselor through hospice, my bereavement counselor, a little bit about going to Levine Dickson on Fred's birthday and how to show my appreciation for both shifts, day and night shift. And so I ultimately decided that in the morning on his birthday, I would get coffee and donuts. Fred loved donuts and that was his last food actually, donuts. And so I knew that'd be special. So I wanted to take coffee and donuts to the staff and the volunteers, and then also set some up in the family room for any of the families that were visiting patients. but I loved night shift, and I really didn't want them to be neglected, and I know donuts probably wouldn't make it until night shift. And so I decided to do birthday cupcakes. That was actually my counselor's recommendation, to do birthday cupcakes and drop them off in the evening for night shift, so I'd get to see those wonderful people as well. So at that point I knew, okay, Fred's birthday is gonna start at Levine Dickson and end at Levine Dickson. And that made me feel better. I sort of had a plan in place, a way to approach the day in a way that was hopefully gonna be meaningful and significant and helping to honor Fred by paying it forward. So after this day of giving back, what I found was that no one wanted to stop. People kept saying, can we do this every day? Can every day be Pay It Forward for Fred Day? And gradually, over the weeks that followed Fred's birthday, I would get emails, people would stop me and say, hey, guess what I did for Fred today? And I just was so surprised, because in my mind it was this one day and everyone was pitching in. And instead it's sort of become whenever any of us really goes outside of ourselves and reaches out to help someone, everyone in my circle is now saying, oh, I paid it forward for Fred today. I got gas for a stranded motorist, or I signed up to volunteer at the food bank. And so I think we all were so inspired by that day and so caught up in giving back that we realized that maybe the checks that we normally write, maybe we could do more than that. And so it's been really fun to see the things people come up with and ways that people are continuing to pay it forward for Fred long after his birthday. And I personally felt that that one day was not enough. So I recently signed up to be a staff support volunteer with Hospice and Palliative Care of Charlotte Region. And I just got the email this week that I'm official and my badge is in the mail. So I have a couple new assignments that I'm gonna be working with to start giving back to the organization that gave so much to us. And so that's one of the ways that I'm making sure that I continue to pay it forward for Fred long past his birthday. And I know that lots of people in the community who've been touched by Fred's story will do the same and will think about ways that we can all help each other and honor memories of loved ones and just honor the spirit of paying it forward by finding ways to give back in our community.
Bye bye.